Nearly every disaster at a UK traffic stop doesn't happen during the stop itself. It happens in the 90 seconds right after the officer hands your documents back. Not while he's checking them, after. The flashing lights, the window coming down, the license passed over, none of that is the dangerous part. That's simply what the law already entitles him to. An officer can pull you over on a deserted road at midnight without ever explaining why, and there's nothing you can do about that, nor should you try. The stop was never where the real action happens. The real action happens in the 2 minutes that follow. Here's what almost nobody explains. Pulling you over costs the officer absolutely nothing. But turning that stop into an actual case against you, that requires something extra. It requires your cooperation, your answers, your permission, access to your vehicle. None of that is automatically his. He has to get it from you. And there's a short list of friendly, well-rehearsed lines built specifically to get it. Lines designed to turn an ordinary pullover into a chat, the chat into notes, the notes into justification, and the justification into a search. There are 6 of these lines. Think of them as a toolkit built for extracting exactly what the law can't simply hand him. And naturally, you'll think, I haven't done anything wrong, so I'll just be friendly, answer a few things, and be on my way in a couple of minutes. That urge to be the agreeable, cooperative one is precisely what this entire toolkit relies on. Now, 5 of those 6 lines work whether you cooperate or not. The law backs the officer regardless. But there's one, just one, where the officer has 0 power unless you personally hand it to him. One where your own words become the only authorization he'll ever get. And most people give it away, smiling, within the first 30 seconds. Keep watching, because I'll walk you through exactly which line that is. And I'll give you one calm sentence that shuts down all 6 tactics simultaneously. A fully legal line you can say from the driver's seat or the passenger seat. Then I'll show you the 7-word follow-up that decides whether you're driving home in 5 minutes or sitting there for the rest of the night. Because that last line trips up even people who think they already know their rights inside and out. For 15 years, I worked alongside drivers in police stations and interview rooms across England and Wales, untangling conversations that should never have taken place at the roadside in the first place. None of this is legal advice. It's the plain English version of what I believe every driver in this country should have memorized long before blue lights ever appear in their mirror. Let's start with why this actually matters, because the stakes go well beyond a fine. A routine 2-minute document check turns into a conversation. The conversation becomes a note in a pad. That note becomes a reason to dig further. Digging further becomes a search. And a search, even a completely fruitless one, can mean an hour stranded roadside with your boot emptied onto the pavement. Sometimes worse. All of it triggered by a handful of polite sentences you offered up voluntarily because staying quiet felt awkward. That's exactly what this video is meant to prevent. I want you to see how subtly this unfolds, because it never feels like a setup while it's happening. One driver described it afterward this way: the officer genuinely had nothing to go on. They talked for a minute through the window. The officer seemed pleasant. He answered a couple of easy questions about his evening, and before he knew it, the back door was open and someone was rifling through his shopping bags. He never actually refused anything because he was never really given a clear yes or no moment. He'd been so agreeable throughout that the search felt like a natural continuation, and by the time it started, the chance to object had already slipped by. That's the entire danger captured in one moment. It's not that people crumble under pressure, it's that they stay helpful right up until the point where being helpful costs them something. So here's the sentence. Memorize it the way you'd memorize your own number plate. Officer, here's my license. I'll follow any lawful instruction you give me, but I won't be answering questions, and I don't consent to a search. That's the whole thing. Say it out loud once tonight, so it's already yours before you ever actually need it. In a minute, I'll break down what each part of that sentence is quietly doing. But first, you need to understand exactly what the law does require of you, because getting the next 90 seconds wrong is how a routine stop turns into an arrest. There are genuine obligations here, and I'll always be upfront about them. First, you must stop. A uniformed constable can require any vehicle on a public road to pull over under Section 163 of the Road Traffic Act, and refusing to stop is itself a criminal offence. Second, as the driver, you're required to provide your name, address, and produce your licence. That's Sections 164 and 165 of the same Act. If you don't have the physical documents with you, you can bring them to a station later, but the name and address must be given at the time. Third, if you're lawfully asked to give a breath sample, you're required to do so. Under Section 6, refusing a preliminary breath test without a valid reason is a serious offence on its own. Fourth, you're expected to physically comply with lawful instructions. That's really the full bargain the law strikes with you. Your identity, your documents, your breath when it's legally required, and your physical cooperation. Hand those over without resistance. Notice everything that's missing from that list. Where you're headed, where you've been, what you were doing that evening, whether you've had anything to drink, the story of your night. None of that is something the law compels you to share. And even the stop and search power under Section 163 has boundaries worth knowing. Courts have ruled it can't be used improperly. The power to stop is for traffic matters, not a license to go fishing. Every one of the 6 tricks I'm about to describe is aimed squarely at that gap, the space after your legal obligations are met, where you owe him nothing more than a polite no. The first trick lands the moment he has your license in hand, and it's a question you've been answering reflexively since childhood. Do you know why I stopped you? Notice the pull of it. Your brain wants to be helpful, wants to guess. Was it your speed? A brake light? That junction back there? But look at what that question is actually doing. Any guess you offer is essentially a confession. Was I going a bit fast? Sorry? Go straight into his notebook. In your own words, driver admitted to speeding. And he never had to prove a thing because you handed it to him voluntarily within the first minute. That question does 3 jobs at once. It harvests an admission, it establishes a timeline, and it reads your demeanour. Nervous, rehearsed, chatty, all of it gets noted. So the correct response to the oldest question in policing is 2 friendly words. No, sorry. No theory, no apology disguised as a confession. And here's an asymmetry that should put your mind at ease. You have a right to silence. Your guesses can be used against you forever, but staying silent at that window generally can't be. There's one honest caveat I won't hide from you. Under Section 34 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, a court can be asked to draw a conclusion from your silence, but only if you've been formally questioned under caution about a specific offence, and only if you later rely in court on something you could have mentioned earlier but didn't. A casual roadside "where are you off to" doesn't meet that bar. There's no caution, no charge. Silence in that moment is genuinely free, so don't make a dramatic show of it. Just decline pleasantly and carry on. The second trick is the friendliest one in the whole set. Where are you heading tonight? It's never idle chatter. It's the first door, and opening it opens the next one. Then, where have you come from? Then, how long were you there? Then, who with? Then, anything to drink? Each polite answer narrows down your evening, builds a timeline, and gives him material to test you against later. Your entire night reconstructed and signed off by you, free of charge, on the hard shoulder. So hold the line the law actually sets. Your name, address, and license. Those you give. Your destination, your origin, your Friday night. Those you keep. You can decline every one of those questions without any consequence at all. The third trick is the important one. The move where your own voice becomes the warrant. Mind if I have a quick look through the car? This is where everything diverges from the American clips you've probably seen online. Over there, it's about consent. Here, a vehicle search runs on legal grounds, not on your permission. To search your car for drugs, an officer needs reasonable grounds to suspect drugs under Section 23 of the Misuse of Drugs Act. To search for stolen or prohibited items, he needs reasonable grounds under Section 1 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, an objective, explainable reason, not a hunch, and certainly not the fact that you chose not to chat. Hold those two facts side by side. If he already has grounds, he's searching, whether you agree or not. Your permission changes nothing. So the only moment that polite question actually matters is when he doesn't have grounds, which means the very fact he's asking is usually the tell that he can't proceed without your yes. It goes further in your favour too. The official code officers work under, Code A, states an officer must not search someone even with their consent if no legal power to search actually exists. In other words, in this country, unlike those American videos, consent isn't even supposed to count as a valid basis for a search. There's no upside to giving it, and every reason to withhold it. The calm response is simply, I don't consent to a search. What are your grounds? If he has them, he'll act regardless. If he doesn't, you've just shut the only door he had open. The fourth trick isn't a question at all. It's an instruction, and this is the one you actually obey. Step out of the car. When an officer is exercising a genuine legal power, a search, a breath test, he can require you to get out, and refusing tips you straight into obstruction offences. This is really the hinge point of the whole encounter, and it's the one thing most people get exactly backwards. You comply with your body while holding your line with your words. Step out, stay calm, keep your hands relaxed, while your answers stay exactly where they were. No admissions, no consent. Comply physically, decline verbally. That single distinction is the entire skill here. The fifth trick usually gets deployed once you're standing on the verge. Right, we'll just get a warrant then. Decode this, because it's almost always empty. Police don't need a warrant to search a car. Reasonable grounds under Section 23 or Section 1 is sufficient. On the spot, no paperwork required. So if he genuinely had grounds, he'd already be searching. We'll get a warrant nearly always translates to, I don't have grounds yet. Help me out. It's a bluff aimed squarely at your nerves, and now you can see straight through it. Which brings us to the sixth trick, delivered like a final move. Fine, I'll call the drug dog down. Most people fold right there. Here's the truth. A dog that's physically present and gives a genuine indication can contribute to an officer's grounds. But a hypothetical dog 20 minutes away is not grounds. It's pressure, plain and simple. And a stop can't be dragged out just to wait for a dog to arrive. The law is clear that your detention can't extend beyond the actual purpose of the stop. Once the traffic matter is resolved, so is the justification for holding you. A dog that isn't there yet is a threat, not an actual power. That single point deserves its own video, but for now, just know it's the weakest card in the whole deck. 6 tricks, 1 toolkit, and now the sentence that shuts down every one of them at once. Say it slowly with me, because there's not a wasted word. Officer, here's my license. I'll follow any lawful instruction you give me, but I won't be answering questions, and I don't consent to a search. Look at what each piece is doing. Here's my license, I'll follow any lawful instruction, hands over everything the law genuinely owns. Your documents, your compliance, offered before he even has to ask, which quietly eliminates the word uncooperative before it can ever land in the notebook. I won't be answering questions. Shuts down tricks 1 and 2 in 5 words. No admission, no timeline, no reconstructed evening, and your silence there costs you nothing. I don't consent to a search permanently shuts down trick 3. It withholds the one warrant he might otherwise have gotten from you. 3 clauses, and the entire extraction toolkit has nowhere left to go. Delivery matters just as much as wording. Flat, calm, polite. like someone declining a survey, not someone making a stand. No speech about your rights, no lecture, no edge in your voice. The words carry the legal weight. Your tone just needs to carry the words. Say it once, and when he asks again, because he will, word for word, like a recording. Boring is invisible, and invisible is exactly the goal. Before moving on, here's something worth repeating in every one of these videos, and I mean it sincerely. Most officers are decent people doing a genuinely difficult job, and none of this is about being difficult with them. It's about recognizing that being polite and giving up your rights are two entirely separate things, and that the friendly, innocent, chatty driver is very often the one who talks himself into a wasted afternoon he never needed to have. Because he'll push back. They usually do. Push number 1 is the oldest line in the book. If you've got nothing to hide, why not just let me have a look? Don't argue, don't take the bait. Simply repeat the same sentence, word for word. Having nothing to hide isn't the same as authorizing a search he had no legal power to conduct. Push number 2 carries a bit more edge. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. Same words, same calm tone. Third time he's heard it now, and that repetition is exactly the point. It's muscle memory. Then, once the paperwork stalls and there's nothing left for him to write down, you reach for the line that ends the whole thing. 7 words. Am I being detained, or am I free to go? This is the real turning point, and it's the one that catches even people who know everything else, because once the purpose of the stop is complete, so is his authority to hold you. If he's not detaining you on a lawful basis, you're free to leave, and those 7 words force him to say so, out loud. Now, let me walk you through how the whole thing sounds when it goes exactly right, because hearing it play out beats any checklist. Lights come on, you pull over, window down. Evening. Do you know why I stopped you? You smile. No, sorry. Here's my license, and I'll follow any lawful instruction you give me, but I won't be answering questions, and I don't consent to a search. A pause. Where have you come from tonight? I'd rather not get into my evening, but here's everything you're entitled to. Mind if I take a quick look in the car? I don't consent to a search. What are your grounds? No grounds come. Step out for me. Out you go. Calm, hands relaxed, same line holding steady. We could always get a dog down. That's fine. Am I being detained or am I free to go? And there's nowhere left for it to travel, because you gave him everything the law actually required, and not one thing beyond that. Ticket or good night. That's the whole encounter. A few myths worth clearing up before you go, since you've probably heard all of them delivered in an American accent. There's no probable cause requirement here. The applicable standard is reasonable grounds, a different and lower bar. Nobody has to read you your rights at a roadside stop. There's no Miranda warning in this country. The caution comes before formal questioning about an offence, not on the verge. You can't plead the Fifth. There is no Fifth Amendment here, just the right to silence, which operates on its own terms. And yes, you're allowed to film. Recording the police from a public place is lawful in England and Wales. Just don't touch your phone while you're actually driving, since that's a separate offence entirely. One more note for whoever's riding in the passenger seat. A passenger has that same right to silence, and only has to give their details when there's genuine suspicion involved. And this exact sentence works word for word from either seat of the car. There are 2 ways people still manage to undo all of this, and they're worth naming because I've watched them happen over and over. The first is the over-explainer. He knows he hasn't done anything wrong, so he sets out to prove it. The full itinerary, where he was, who he was with, why he took that particular road, all delivered in one anxious rush. He believes he's clearing his name. What he's actually doing is handing over the entire timeline and every detail the officer would otherwise have had to work to obtain. Innocence isn't something you perform at the roadside. It's a case you make later, if you ever need to, with proper legal representation beside you. The second is the opposite type, the roadside lawyer. He knows a bit of the law and wants the officer to know it too, so he starts citing sections and case names through the window, getting progressively louder, turning a 2-minute stop into a standoff. Here's the hard truth about that approach. He might be entirely correct, and it won't help him one bit. A legal argument is won calmly, on the record, in a courtroom. It's lost on the hard shoulder, where it just reads as trouble and gives the officer a reason to keep you there longer. Say your line, stay level, and save the legal debate for the venue where it actually counts. So, let's bring it all together. 6 tricks. The memory test, the friendly small talk, the request to search, the order to step out, the warrant bluff, and the dog threat. One sentence defeats all 6. Officer, here's my license. I'll follow any lawful instruction you give me, but I won't be answering questions, and I don't consent to a search. And then the 7 words that carry you home. Am I being detained, or am I free to go? Learn those 2 lines the way you know your own number plate, because the driver who carries them isn't being difficult. He simply already understands every move on the board before the officer makes it. Keep it calm, keep it brief.